Democrats are bad at messaging.
Yeah.
We don't have a coalition.
We do have a coalition. What we don't have is leadership. One supporter told us that the single thing that Democrats need to do is, quote, replace the leadership.
Primary season has pretty much just about wrapped up, and we have a lot to talk about, and our supporters have a lot to say about it. As you guys know, throughout the primary season, we have not really taken sides in any primaries, but we have been asking what our supporters think and feel about what's going on, and they've got quite a few opinions, so let's get into it.
Yeah, and I think to kick things off with the most recent news of the primary season, we saw a bit of an upset last night with Francesca Hong losing that Democratic primary for governor in Wisconsin. And it's interesting, we actually really didn't cover that race much because I feel like it's kind of flown under the radar as it's not a Senate race. I mean, not that the state level races aren't important, of course, but it's not going to affect the Senate.
It flew under the radar. It was so messy because Crowley, who won, he had dropped out like a few weeks ago, and then he came back.
I was going to say, it kind of came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, so long story short, there were a lot of other people running, but the main contenders were Hong, Crowley, and Barnes, and then Crowley dropped out, and then Barnes dropped out, and then Crowley came back in, and then Crowley won by just a few thousand votes last night. It was a very, very close race. Most of the evening, I was up pretty late watching the results, but most of the night, Hong and Crowley were only separated by somewhere between 500 to 800 votes for most of the night, and they kept flipping back and forth, and then eventually all of the extra votes that came from Milwaukee County came out, and they were all in favor of Crowley, and all the extra rural stuff around the edges of Wisconsin came back for Crowley, and Hong ultimately lost by a few thousand votes.
That's crazy. And I mean, I think we saw a bit of national coverage around that. We didn't do any polling on that race just because I didn't feel like there was enough of an awareness boost for informed opinions. Interestingly, though, when we were doing the research for this episode and reading through all of your latest supporter comments just on all of the other surveys we've been running, we've had a lot of general surveys on people's opinions on how the Democratic Party is handling everything going on in these recent months. And interestingly, one person back on July 22nd said, quote, "I was a huge supporter of Tammy Baldwin here in Wisconsin. Where the is she? We can all see she took almost $3 million from AIPAC, so that must be why she's not saying anything. We are now excited for Francesca Hong, and establishment Dems are trying to hold her back. You lost a lifelong contributor and supporter." And it's interesting, this person was clearly directing a comment at the general Democratic Party because, I mean, as we found in our focus group, most people still, and we're working on this, we run an independent focus group of Democratic donors, yet the number of people who still think that every text message and email from anyone comes directly from the DNC, it's unfortunate that they all look the same, and we're working on that, but there's only so much we can do. And that being said, I think this person has a point, though, given, for example, Bernie and AOC, who, even though I don't know if you call them the establishment, they are certainly an establishment in the progressive world. They endorsed El Sayed, but not Francesca Hong, and I mean, she got feels like no national backing, and that's what the supporter here is concerned about. But I don't know, what's your kind of view on why do you think that she didn't get that backing when maybe some other progressive candidates did?
Well, Thanksgiving is speaking now, and I want to make this clear that we don't think that progressives are bad candidates. There's a fair amount of progressive candidates that we like, but not every progressive candidate is a good candidate. And I think that's something that we're really learning right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's something that's really important for the progressive movement to start to recognize in terms of coalition building and allyship and such, is that not every candidate you put out is going to be good. In the establishment, not every candidate you put out is going to be good. If you're a Republican, no candidate you put out is going to be good. And this is not me saying that Francesca Hong was a bad candidate. I want to make that very clear. I don't have any
She said she hated Thanksgiving and she was running statewide in a swing state. I'm sorry, she was a bad candidate.
That's it. My point more so is that people decided in the end that they didn't want Francesca Hong as a possible governor of Wisconsin. That's okay. Or maybe in a few years that can happen. I don't know, but it wasn't her time.
Here's my other question, though. Did they decide they didn't want her as governor, or did they decide they didn't want her to get curb stomped by a Republican in what should be a blue wave year?
That's another thing with everything that's happened in Michigan that a lot of people have been talking about is, well, should we have voted offensively or defensively in the primary? And it looks, from my perspective, like an offensive vote versus a defensive vote of, hey, if we vote for Stevens, she's more likely to win in November. I don't know how true that is. Maybe El Sayed will win in November. I hope he wins in November. We are backing the Democratic nominees of each of these races because that is the important thing here to do. But, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens.
Yeah, no, I mean, I gotta say, and yeah, obviously, we want a Democratic majority, and that is our focus in every regard. That being said, I'm nervous about Michigan. First of all, as far as I saw, the polls were expecting, a 15-point win for Al Sayed going into Election Day there, and he won by, less than a point?
That's where our polls landed at, was a pretty narrow victory, if that.
We actually, and I mean, not to say that our methodology of texting Democratic donors from across the country and asking what they think is scientific, but the fact that we did get so much closer than actual rigorous polling that the media was counting on really says something. It was interesting, just to remind everyone of our results. I have 2 survey results from Democratic donors, and this is across the country, not specific to Michigan. So we had about 75 people in a survey that we ran twice, once before McMorrow dropped out, once after. And after, in the head-to-head, which is what the race was, we had 37% for Stevens, 35% for El Sayed, and 28% unsure. So again, that unsure gap is huge there, and I think where a lot of the uncertainty comes from. But more interestingly, before McMorrow dropped out, we had 45% McMorrow, 20% Stevens, 18% El Sayed, 17% unsure. So clearly there is a very big contingent that supported Mallory McMorrow. She's a very pragmatic, progressive, grassroots donor-based candidate, and she got crowded out in a war between 2 establishments.
Yeah, something that I'm pretty sure we've said in the past. I know that we said we don't endorse in primaries, but we have talked a lot about how much we really like Mallory McMorrow. And that's also because our supporters really liked Mallory McMorrow. We felt like she was truly the only candidate that was fighting for the people of Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
And I really hope that she does not stop her political career.
No.
Want her to keep going.
But
again,
she will.
I hope so.
Again, too, to be clear, we were not endorsing her Senate run. We were talking about Mallory McMorrow before she even announced her Senate run, and it's actually dates back to when I worked at the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, and we were fighting tooth and nail to try to get Democratic donors like you to pay attention to the down-ballot races. She was a state senator at the time, and she was one of the few across the country who was able to get the level of grassroots enthusiasm that we get for our Senate races for down ballot races. And that's why we liked her so much, because in a time when Stevens and El Sayed were making things not only nationalized but internationalized, she was going local.
Yep. We're a big fan of her. Mallory, if you ever want to come on, if you're watching this, you are welcome. We would absolutely love to have you on. And we know that our supporters would love to hear from you too.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, and I think I really want to dig into the issue that I hate to say crowded her out of the race, because it was funny. I joked behind the scenes, and I don't think I ever really said this publicly again because we weren't making that endorsement, but I was just waiting for somebody to say Stevens for Israel, Al Sayed for Palestine, McMorrow for Michigan, because that primary was the most toxic litigation of an issue that has absolutely eroded Democrats' ability to get anything done, from Sunrise Movement no longer caring about climate change to...
Wait, Sunrise Movement doesn't care about climate? They're called Sunrise Movement.
Yeah, I don't know. Now they seem to be backing the oil barons and their terrorist proxies, but...
No way. Oh my God.
No comment.
Oh my God.
Anyway, all seriousness, though, I mean, regardless of any of the horrific things happening in this war, just like any other war, because war crimes are happening across the world because all wars are crimes. But the way that anti-Semitism has seeped into the Democratic base and our ability to get anything done on a progressive scale, and it's just, this isn't just coming from us. I mean, we do have a vested interest in this as two Jewish progressives who don't like what we're seeing in Israel, just like how we don't like what we're seeing from Trump in America, but we still believe that people like us have a place in the world and are seeing a lot of our compatriots and a lot of the people we agree with apparently don't agree that we should exist, and that's a problem. I mean, one supporter said in response to one of our recent surveys about kind of what happened to the No Kings movement and the energy around that, someone said, "At the last rally I attended, the speaker began a chant, 'Fuck Israel,' not 'fuck Bibi' or 'end the genocide.' I'm revolted by what Israel continues to do in Palestine. I'm not Jewish, but when I heard that chant, I turned on my heels and left your protest. An event meant to build momentum and increase public participation instead did the exact opposite." That was a quote from July 27th. Somebody else said just yesterday, August 11th, "I will chip in a lot more when you do something about the rise of anti-Semitism in our ranks." And then someone else said on July 24th, "Too many in the party have chosen to demonize Israel, AIPAC, and Jews in general. Quote, I'm not anti-Semitic, just hate Zionists. I will no longer support a party that tolerates that kind of thinking or behavior."
One of the most interesting facts that I learned recently was that AIPAC makes up 1% to 2.5% of the outside spending money in politics. That's a very small amount. Tom Steyer spent more money trying to get himself elected than AIPAC has spent in American politics.
Which is funny because he was criticizing big AIPAC money, and
you guys are fighting against the wrong 1%. Yeah. But some of the other groups that make up significantly larger chunks, and I don't have exact percentages, but there are groups like MAGA Inc., Make America Great Again, Future Forward USA, the House Majority PAC, the Senate Majority PACs, the Congressional Leadership and Senate Leadership Funds, Fair Shake and Cryptocurrency, AI and Tech like Think Big and Jobs and Democracy PAC. Labor unions spend more. Uber spends more than AIPAC does. This is not me defending AIPAC. I want to make that very clear, but we can't just focus on one group. And when we ask you why you don't like AIPAC, you just bring up that you don't like Israel or that you don't like Jews.
AIPAC has become the new buzzword for Jew money, 3 parentheses.
Yeah, literally. And again, we are not the largest fans of the way that AIPAC has decided to conduct a lot of their politics, but that doesn't mean that we should be anti-Semitic towards all of the Jewish people who are working with AIPAC or just in general in politics. There actually recently, within like a couple years ago, there were people who used to be supporters of one of my candidates who said that they would no longer give us money because most of the donors for my candidate were Jewish. And most of those donors had never given to AIPAC. I went and researched it. And they refused to give to us because they saw Jewish names and said, oh, well, they must be involved with AIPAC. None of them had ever donated to AIPAC, and my candidate had never, ever taken money from AIPAC.
We can thank Track AIPAC for that. I mean, I don't know if you saw those red graphics, which change depending on who your primary opponent is, and encompass up to and including all money given by anyone who has ever given to a Jewish group, including their local synagogue.
Unless you're ultra progressive, then that doesn't count.
Let's be clear, though, and I'm going to call Abdul El-Sayed out on this one, even though he's our nominee, because we do need to hold our candidates to a higher standard.
Correct.
Rhetoric like this is how you end up with a guy driving a pickup truck full of weapons into a Jewish preschool in Michigan.
That silence should make you uncomfortable. That silence here should make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, and what was his response? Hurt people, hurt people? God, first of all, I don't know if you saw the attack ad the Republicans just put out about him. I'm going to play it.
Abdul Rahman Mohammed El-Sayed, the most radical Senate candidate in America.
Pretty dangerous.
El-Sayed pledged support for the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, a designated foreign terrorist group. He wants to hike taxes on Michigan waitresses, delivery drivers, and seniors on Social Security. He joined a sex offender and a murderer to demand the mass release of dangerous prisoners. And when his ally claimed America deserved 9/11,
America deserved 9/11, dude.
El-Sayed refused to disavow it.
I'm not here to disavow people's views.
Abdul El-Sayed, too radical, too dangerous, wrong for Michigan.
I am absolutely terrified for, I don't know, about, was it a month from now when the 25th anniversary of 9/11's coming up? You think the Republicans are going to hold back with their attack ads?
Absolutely not.
I'm not saying any of it's okay, by the way. It's probably going to be some of the most vile Islamophobia we've ever seen, but it doesn't change the fact that it's going to work and that we've opened ourselves up to this broadside.
Root of the issue here, and we've been talking about this for years, is that Democrats are bad at messaging.
Yeah.
We don't have a coalition. We don't know what we want to say.
We do have a coalition. What we don't have is leadership.
There we go. That's a better way to put it.
And it's actually one supporter told us on July 24th that the single thing that Democrats need to do is, quote, replace the leadership. And I mean, again, I don't think it's that our base wants radicals, because as we see in the divisiveness in these comments, not everyone's happy about that. They just want somebody who can get up there and show a backbone. And right now, other than John Ossoff, the radicals are the only ones who can do that. And that's why everyone's begging for John Ossoff to run for president right now. And everything he's doing is absolutely brilliant. But one supporter comment that I think really sums this up, and I think is how we close off our primary discourse. DSA and progressives and centrists need to stop infighting and attacking. Build a broad coalition on virtuous values. Stop being petty. Support candidates that the people choose and get to work beating the corrupt Republicans in November. Do you want to keep our democracy? Then get to work together. And that's what we got to do.
That's what we got to do. But I said this earlier today in a video I posted on our social media, is that Democrats, we can't just reach across the red aisle. We also need to reach across the blue aisle. No matter which side of the Democrats you're on, you need to reach across the blue aisle so that we can make things happen and stop all of this dystopian shit that's happening.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And as for our role, New Digital Now, in all of this, we will continue to read all of your thoughts and comments on everything that's happening. And as the general election gets closer, you're going to be seeing a lot more of that on our public platforms. We're very excited that we have been working on some incredible new technology to help us most effectively deploy it to help fix that messaging. And we're excited to share all of that with you in the coming months. But in the meantime, I think the one discussion, we can talk about the infrastructure, we can talk about all the background stuff, which is super important, but it seems that everyone from the media to the supporters to literally just everyone is pining for a figurehead for that leadership. And one figure that often comes up, I mean, I think more divisively and I hate to say more mythically than any other in the progressive movement besides for Bernie, who clearly is old enough that it's time for him to pass the torch, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, who our supporters, I mean, I would say are pretty equally divided on, because I saw in looking for all of the quotes for this episode, one person said that unless AOC gets the nomination, people won't believe in either party anymore. Meanwhile, another said, quote, American Democrats are well read enough to turn down a veer into socialism no matter how good AOC is on a sound system, is what another supporter said. So
yeah, she's a very divisive figure, but I think that magic we were talking about that Mallory McMorrow has, AOC also has that. People see her as a leader, and even the people who don't like her, most of the people who I've spoken with, they still view her as a leader. And I want to bring that back to a point that we heard a lot of in 2016. It was Hillary versus Trump, and that was that a lot of people chose to vote for Donald Trump because they didn't feel like Democrats were leaders anymore, and they weren't pushing for things, and they weren't pushing for any sort of change. People feel like AOC is that Democrat who is pushing for change and is a leader and does care about working people. And she's kind of the antithesis of the downfall of the Democratic Party, as a lot of people are viewing it. And I think that's really interesting that even people who are not a fan of her politics necessarily, they still see her as a leader.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's funny. I have a Republican friend up in Pennsylvania who I go back and forth with on this stuff. And he was asking me, so is AOC the leader of your party? Like basically trying to gotcha me into the entire party believing everything that AOC's ever said. And I think it's actually, fortunately or unfortunately, a consequence of the position she's built for herself. She kind of has this mythical element of kind of the bellwether of when a progressive idea, policy, talking point becomes mainstream. She's almost like the representative of the Democratic Party, and whether that's because she's selective about who she endorses. For example, she didn't endorse Francesca Hong or Graham Plattner, and look how that turned out. But I think it also has to do with the fact that she is the most high-profile woman in progressive politics and kind of faces a lot of the internalized misogyny of the media that comes with it. And I mean, put aside her policy positions, the way she has been treated both on Twitter and in certain semblances of the media recently has been absolutely vicious. And Shayna, I think you know what I'm talking about, but
yeah, if you don't know, AOC posted a video recently of the process she's going through to freeze her eggs. And that is something that thousands, if not millions of women do for multiple reasons, multiple reasons. And people were really confused as to why she was doing it. And then TMZ was able to find out that she and her fiance broke up 2 years ago.
Hold on. There's fortunately for you, unfortunately for the world, I think your algorithm on Twitter spared you from the absolutely disgusting onslaught of misogyny that linked those two events. Because what happened was she posted that video, then the Elon manosphere bots searching for their last little bit of that Elon money before it goes away, which, fun fact, kind of related, kind of not, the Twitter monetization program is changing in early September to finally deal with the people who are making way too much money posting crap. And people are now trying to get their last payouts in. And I think that has a lot to do with this, unfortunately.
Lovely. Women getting the short end of the stick again. What a surprise.
Yeah, it's horrible. But what happened was people were like, hang on a second, she's 36 and engaged. Why isn't she just having kids with her fiance? She must hate him. And basically, misogynist Twitter put AOC's now ex-fiance into the proverbial online cuck chair before a reporter who I think probably is regretting their decision to post what they thought was common knowledge, the fact that a source told them that AOC broke up with her fiance 18 months ago, which is, I think, the first confirmation we have of something that, to her credit, and as she should, she was able to keep private. I mean, you and I have discussed on this podcast before how we keep our
relationships private. Yeah. That's something that a lot of politicians do. Yesterday, I took my fiance to a political fundraiser for the first time in years for him to meet a bunch of the people that I work with. And a ton of people didn't even realize that I was engaged or that I had a boyfriend or that I was even in a relationship, because that's something I see a lot of people all the time. I'm in public all the time. People know who I am, but I'm okay with my life being public. I know that he does not want his life public and politicized in that way, so I keep him out of those things. AOC was doing the same thing here, but when men keep their wives out of the picture, it's always, oh, he's protecting her privacy. But if I'm keeping, my fiance, my boyfriend, my husband out of the question or out of the view, it's, oh, well, what are you hiding? Why are you hiding that?
I'm sorry, when men keep their mistresses out of the limelight to protect privacy,
protect privacy.
Cares.
No, but this is something that AOC was sharing with people, let them know that they are not alone if they need or want to freeze their eggs and how the process goes. And she also talked about how tough it is for women to be able to do that and how the healthcare system is just horrible to women. And all of these men decided to talk about how, oh, well, now she's open. They could decide to go have babies with her. They were sliding into her DMs and wanting to slide into other things. Like,
there's a video of her on her way to a workout class in a crop top going around that the comments are making me sick.
Yeah, but men can go to their workout classes shirtless and no one says anything. But if I go to my workout classes in a crop top and leggings, just like workout clothes, all of a sudden it's a problem and I'm sexualizing myself. Women can never win. This week, there's also, if you're very online, there's just been lots of other discussions between influencers about what being a woman means. And I'm not sure why everyone's deciding to attack us this week. And and people are trying to pit all types of women against each other. That's not how this is. All women are women. All of us have different experiences, and the government's trying to fuck all of us, no matter what type of woman we are. And the government should be out of those opinions.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And the way that these...
And Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter especially, and all social media, because I think to wrap this up, I want to talk about, it's interesting because we are building something that necessarily relies on this, but at the same time, we have to be careful in how we do it. The parasocial relationships that are built not only in politics, but in life between everyday people and the people who influence their lives online, because it's funny, there's a lot of talk on Twitter about the permanent underclass relating to AI, but in reality, I think the biggest difference these days between the K-shaped economy that's only going to grow in the future is the difference between people who are thinking for themselves and whose thoughts are algorithmically guided. And it's going to be really interesting as AI slop becomes more and more prevalent to see how people look to the people they can trust in media and pop culture for some semblance of real connection and community that doesn't really exist anymore.
It's not just AI slop that's been making people not be able to know what their opinions are. I just saw a really, really great video on TikTok. I don't remember if I sent it to you, from a creator named Jenna Palick. And the whole video was about, are you able to form your own opinions, or are you just being influenced by everything else around you? And most of this was around the discourse of an influencer's wedding dress. And like, that's the least important part of this. But this woman, she looked beautiful in her dress. She loved her dress, but people decided to hate on her because she is a rich influencer who could have got a custom wedding dress, and she decided to buy something off the rack.
Oh my God, who cares?
Who cares? But there were several people, including myself. I loved her dress. I've been going wedding dress shopping right now for my own wedding. I loved her dress. And there were so many people who wanted to hate on her just because she was an influencer. And it started making people, I saw people say, I love your dress. And they would get into arguments and say, actually, now I don't like your dress anymore because of the way people were speaking to me.
Also, how many custom dresses have you seen that are just the absolute ugliest thing you've ever seen?
So many of them. So many of them.
I'm sorry.
But,
I shouldn't be saying that.
Part of the point of the video that she made was that people don't know how to make their own opinions anymore.
Oh, no. Don't get me started on online wedding discourse. I mean, I just
gotten into it and I want to get out of it.
God, thank God I've now been married for a year and that is in the rearview mirror. But oh my God, online wedding discourse. Talk about what is supposed to be the most important event of your life, bringing your community and your people together around what you want to celebrate. And now we're all just listening to the opinions of absolute strangers who have no connection to you or your family or your people. And you're supposed to trust whoever has the most followers. Actually, just this morning, I saw a TikTok from a girl who's like the daughter of a famous wedding planner in New York who said that most of my mom's best vendors don't have social media because they're booked 24/7 and they don't have time for that.
Yeah. I made one post on Reddit asking a very simple question, and everyone was like, you just need to go look back in the thread. This is a dumb question. You can't ask this without having this, and this done. I don't like your opinion. Reddit, I think Reddit and Twitter are better for research sometimes, for like social, like collective gathering things.
Better for reading. Don't post the question unless you want to get flambéed.
I learned my lesson there.
Somebody else will have posted that question.
I didn't find anyone with my question. That's why I posted it. And I learned why you stay silent on Reddit and you just scroll. But anyways, with pop culture stuff now, people can't form opinions for themselves, and how I know that video from that influencer is going to go over most people's heads. I know that we both just saw the Odyssey recently, and we need to talk about that and how most of that movie probably went over most people's heads.
Oh, yeah. Not to mention that, let's start with the number of people who seem to have an opinion without seeing the movie, or Elon Musk, who seems so offended that Nolan used a Viking longboat instead of a proper Bronze Age ship that doesn't exist anymore, and is now using Grok to recreate the entire Odyssey historically accurately from AI, which insane. Like, we didn't miss the point of the final line of the movie, which, spoiler alert, songs will be all they have to remember those of us who could write.
Also, let's also remember that the Odyssey has been translated multiple times by multiple people, and we've gotten different translations each time. So we don't know exactly what is historically accurate. And I found out most people didn't know this. The Odyssey is a fictional story. I want to say that one more time. The Odyssey is a fictional story. It's not real. It never happened. Most people that I've talked to didn't know that. That's why most stuff went over their heads.
It's the basis for Greek mythology, and we don't need to get into Greek mythology
No,
right now, but
the Odyssey is not real.
yeah.
It's not a real story.
No. That being said, the number of things that it has inspired, and I think it's what's most fascinating to me, I saw one, I think it was a film professor making a TikTok where he said something about how film adaptations, perhaps one of the most important part about them is what they choose to omit. Because there is no way to perfectly translate a book into a movie, or
especially a book like the Odyssey. There is no perfect translation.
Yeah. No, you have to choose what to omit, and in doing so, you're deciding the story you want to tell. And I mean, I think the one most fair criticism of Nolan's Odyssey was the kind of glossing over of the women characters in the movie, which, I mean, I think writing women has always been Nolan's weak point. But
yeah, I was going to say, Nolan's never been great at writing women.
He admits that himself, though, which is really interesting. Like, he was actually asked what the hardest movie to ever write would be, and he said he would never write a rom-com because he just doesn't think he'd have that ability to make people laugh that way. And
no offense, but I wouldn't want to see a rom-com done by Christopher Nolan.
No.
No, yeah, the glossing over of women characters. And the only other thing that I was upset about, sorry, spoiler alert, was the scene with the Cyclops and how after the Cyclops was stabbed in the book, the Odyssey, one of the most important parts is that they tell the Cyclops that, you know, his name is Nobody. So when people ask the Cyclops what happened, who stabbed you, the Cyclops says, nobody stabbed me. He left that out, which I thought was a very, very, very important part of the story. But those are my only two big criticisms of the movie.
That one I'll actually say, though, I think I see why he omitted that because, again, and this goes to the themes Nolan was trying to tell, which are the hidden consequences of Odysseus' trickery.
Yeah, I know that wasn't the point of
Yeah.
it. He was telling a different perspective of the story, but I don't know. I always thought that was a very important, memorable part of the story. But anyways, like you're saying, it's about Odysseus' consequences for his actions. And again, that went over most people's heads.
I think more than that, though, it was about, first of all, the decline of society and the decline of our ability to come together across cultures. And I think most interestingly was the myth of the sea people, which was another Nolan departure from the Odyssey, where the fact that all this time the mythical sea people were Odysseus and his men who had been pillaging and murdering, and I mean, they thought they were just trying to survive, but in reality, they were doing all of these things that then, through the game of medieval telephone that was how information got around, got twisted to, I mean, it started with the Trojan horse.
When was the Odyssey written again? This all sounds very familiar to, I don't know, what we're living through today.
But put all that aside, because, I mean, the brilliance of the film notwithstanding, I think the cultural moment it has created is so much more than that. I mean, the box office is coming back in a big way, and it's so good to see people just going to the movies again. And I mean, I was fortunate enough, I happened to be visiting some family in California last week, so I talked them into buying some tickets for 70 millimeter IMAX because, I mean, somehow of the 41 theaters in the world that can show it, like 5 of them are in the LA area, but
there's one in the suburbs of Chicago, and I think it's still sold out to go see it. There was one seat like during the last month that you could get, but it was the very, very front row at like 3:15 in the morning. I was like, no, not worth it.
That's incredible. How amazing is that, though? Like, isn't that awesome?
Yeah, and a lot of here in Chicago, we have a lot of local independent movie theaters, and there's actually like a new one that just opened up, which I love. The one that I went to, it's called the Logan Theater here. If you know, you know, it's very cool. All of the rooms literally look like theaters that you would go to see a show or like an opera or a ballet or something. They're
cool.
they're very cool.
Good.
And all of the local movie theaters are able to play the Odyssey because they're able to make enough money from it, from everything going on, to be able to stay in business, which is great. That hasn't happened with a lot of local movie theaters recently. So I love that too.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I hope they just keep running this over and over again. I mean, I'm sure around the Oscar time, they'll do a limited re-release in IMAX 70 millimeter because it was an experience unlike anything else. I mean, I went with some family and family friends who we always used to go to the movies together, and we hadn't gone in years, and we all did this. It was
That's nice.
Oh my God, it was awesome. But just to see a theater full of people who were engaged, like, I can't remember the last time I didn't see one single cell phone come out in a movie.
No, I know. I didn't see a phone come out. All of the theaters that they were all full. And it was just nice. You made a comment about how this is just a big cultural moment. It was nice to see how many people cared about this important piece of history and culture. And all the people that I see making comments online about the Odyssey, my first question is, have you seen it? And if they say no, I'm like, what are you talking about then? You didn't go see the movie. You didn't go see the movie. Have you ever read the Odyssey? No, I had to read it in high school, I think twice. So like, if you haven't had to read it, maybe go do a little research and then come back.
Yeah. Also, like, it's gonna go down, and I mean, we can make that list, and I want to hear in the comments from all of you too what is gonna go on that list of the defining works of our time. Because I mean, we always talk about like how in ancient times the great artists were sponsored by patrons, and everyone's like, everything's turned to slop now. I mean, to an extent that's true, but it's interesting. One other thing to point out about the Odyssey: the Iliad and the Odyssey are supposedly 2 of 10 epic poems. Mm-hmm. And they were what survived. And I think it's true of, similarly, people point to, I forget what literary professor was complaining about how people cited the first detective novel ever written. And this professor was like, there's no way this was the first detective novel ever written, because it self-references tropes about detective novels. Like, it almost makes fun of the genre. So what it really was the first one that was good enough to be preserved. Mm-hmm. So you wonder how much of what was created, and especially before people could write, how much of what was said that was, I mean, I hate to say the slop, the tabloid trash, the pulp fiction of the time.
There's so many pieces of history and literature and writing and music, just everything, art, that we will never have because it didn't survive. Lost media. But that's also, we're never going to be able to keep and preserve everything. But the things that did survive, I do think that those have a little bit more of an importance to them, which is why they survived and people kept passing them on. Mm-hmm. And I really hope that, first of all, if people are going to start getting involved and obsessed with Greek mythology from this, make sure you do proper research. And it's not just everything you've seen off of the Odyssey. There's more information about it. I've already seen a lot of people do that. Also, go read the Odyssey. If you don't want to read the whole thing, go read the Spark Notes. At least do some research about it. But also, make sure that if you're interested in these important pieces of media, you go look at other important pieces of media as well. I'm interested as well to see what people's lists are of important pieces of media. Mm-hmm. This was a very well done movie. Were there things that could have been done better? Yes, but this was a very well done movie and a very well done retelling of the story. It didn't leave a lot of room for people to complain about it. I did see a lot of people complaining why they didn't see Odysseus sleep with his mom, and I wanted to very kindly tell people that that's a completely different story.
Isn't that
That's about Oedipus. Make sure, again, go do your research. I know that their names will start with O. Very, very different stories, and it's okay if you haven't read them in a while. You need to go reread them, whatever. But I really hope that this makes people want to go read more. I don't know, go watch more movies, get off of their phone more, to have less AI slap. And there was no CGI used in the movie either.
Oh, yeah, it was incredible. Not only that, but if you saw it in IMAX 70mm, it went from the camera to your eyes without having been shrunk or compressed digitally. It was all entirely, I mean, they printed it using literally the old techniques from the 1970s.
Actual film.
Oh, yeah. Really, we cannot lose sight of the culture and what brings us together. And I mean, you may be asking, why are we talking about the Odyssey in a political podcast? And besides for the fact that it was awesome and we're talking about it, we can't, and I think one of the criticisms of the Democratic Party too has been the vacuum that we've existed in. And I mean, to put a bookend on it, the Thanksgiving thing is a perfect example, because even if you've got some argument about why Thanksgiving is theoretically wrong for some reason, it's part of American culture. I mean, my Thanksgiving tradition with my family was, when my grandfather was still alive, we would have a big Thanksgiving dinner. And I mean, he was big in the entertainment industry, and LA is a very transplant industry, and he would just invite anyone who couldn't make it home for the holidays to Thanksgiving. So in its prime, our family Thanksgiving was probably 75 to 100 people in my grandparents' house. Oh my God. But it was great, because then after dinner, all the kids would go watch a movie in the living room, think we watched Home Alone like 5 years in a row, but
Never seen that.
you've never seen Home Alone? Oh my God, you need to watch Home Alone.
So speaking of, I guess, important pieces of
my God.
media, I've never seen that.
Go
but
watch Home Alone. Go
No,
watch it.
holidays are about togetherness. These movies, this is the moment of togetherness.
Yeah.
And I noticed you're wearing your LA Dodgers jacket, something that'll bring you more together, your community. I just saw that the Lakers are being bought by Joshua Kushner and Bob Iger
Excuse me?
for
Excuse me?
$12.5 billion.
Wait, hang on. First of all, this is the first time hearing of this. And all right.
I know the Lakers are not the Dodgers, but like they're both from Los Angeles. And
Not only that, though, there actually is a connection that I'm processing in real time, and I'm going to try to keep this as surface level as possible here. The Dodgers owner, Mark Walter, is also the, I guess now former Lakers owner. He's being investigated for some financial impropriety, and just last week, the Dodgers visited the White House to celebrate their World Series championship, where Mark Walter handed Trump a World Series ring with his name on it. Our team, which had not lost a series for most of the season, has lost like almost 10 games in a row now since that happened, and
misery and company go well together.
I started another podcast with a friend of mine who's a Padres fan, who we go back and forth on the Dodgers-Padres rivalry sniping. We can do that another time, but
I just wanted to let you know. But
thanks for
anyways,
that. We should, though. We should do the politics and sports stuff more because Democrats
so much connection.
Yeah, and Democrats don't know ball, and that's a problem.
No, as long as there's beer and hot dogs, the sports game, I don't care who's playing.
And honestly, that's the right attitude because the number
I'm there for the beer and the hot dogs.
I hate to say, and I blame his staff more than him for this, the way that Tim Walz addressed the football stuff in his speeches was clearly written by people who didn't know the first thing about what it's like to be at a football game, because I think the attitude people were looking for is more of what you said. And I mean, I'm a nerd about baseball. I'll go into the stats, but that's because I care about it, not because I'm trying to show other people that I care. And I think we got to be who we are, and we got to engage with the things that we actually like and care about more genuinely. And whatever your thing may be, like if you're a candidate who's super into Star Wars, go hop on a podcast with the Star Wars YouTubers and talk about
that. Or
be
John Ossoff and recreate a Star Wars scene.
Yeah. No, like there are ways to integrate culture into politics in a way that feels real. And it just starts by talking about the stuff you care about.
Yep. You see all the Taylor Swift and such. I stick her in there as much as I can.
Yeah. And I think as we ask you to be part of this movement with us, we owe it to you to let you get to know us a little more, not just on a political level, but on a personal level. And I mean, back to the privacy and the relationships aspect of it, obviously, we want to protect our privacy, protect our security, because unfortunately, people out there are crazy on the internet.
But on the other side of things, like we want to make sure that you guys, our supporters, know that you are not just donors to us. You are people too. And that's a very important part of just being alive in general.
Yeah.
But we're people too, and there's lots of things we can connect on, and that's how we're able to disarm some of the defensiveness and have these really great conversations and critiques on how we can do things better. And we can't do this without all of you, and we're so thankful for all of you to be here. So again, we want to hear how you feel about sports and what movies and pieces of media that you think are going to go down in history as some of the most important pieces, this long list. And a lot of those pieces are very political, I might say, like the Odyssey.
Yeah, and there's also politics really does live in everything. I mean, back to baseball, there will be a whole fight about the lockout and the salary cap and the collective bargaining agreement, and that's
politics.
Literally a union negotiation playing out in sports media, and we should be talking about those things and finding those connections and finding more innovative ways to inform our society. And that's what we're building. We're here at the nexus of all of that, and we appreciate you being along with us and wish we could grab a beer with you all virtually. At some point in the future, we will figure out how to put together some in-person events, because didn't you say that you have been most successful at disarming MAGA types by offering to have a beer with them?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's specifically, they'll say something to me about how, I don't know, I'm not smart enough to be in politics or whatever. And I'll say, okay, let's talk about it over a Busch Light. Like, You like that? Like, yeah, it's my favorite beer. And that's not a joke either. If you know me, I love Busch Light. It's one of my favorite beers. I like cheap, shitty beers. Hopefully soon we will be able to sit down and talk with some of you guys over some cheap, shitty beers or craft beers if that's what you prefer. But I'm a cheap beer girl.
I'm so glad you're going to be the one running because me and my imported beers are probably...
give me a Busch Light or a Bud Light Lime. Those are my two favorite beers. Oh, and Garage Beer. Shout out to them. Love
Garage
their beers
beer.
too.
Is that the Kelsey's?
Yeah, that's Taylor Swift's husband's company.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, I
ownership.
heard that somewhere. That's
their beer and the Garage Beer Lime. They're great. But anyways,
I gotta try
thank
that.
you all for being here. We hope that we will get to sit and have a nice cheap beer with you guys at some point. We cannot do this without you. We appreciate all of your comments. Whenever we send out surveys, please keep answering them. We read through them before every episode that we film. We go through and we read all of them between episodes. We sit and read them and talk with each other about how we can better, represent and support all of you and put your voices out. And that starts with you guys just sending us a comment. So thank you so much for being here. And we appreciate all of your support. And we'll see you again soon.